Um, I can't hear you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you
Hi,
hear me
I
now?
couldn't hear you. Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Let me go to the other one. Hold on a second. Get rid of that one
Okay.
and we'll switch to the other computer. That seems to
And I
be the
also hear
problem.
an echo.
All right. Now you shouldn't hear the echo now.
Right. I can hear you great now.
Good. 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 Glad to hear that. Like I was saying, I know that there's a lot of things going on in this space and all along those lines. So one of the things that is going on is that a lot of times people are paying attention to how governments treat their coverage of different events and all along those lines. So I know that even with what's going on in Venezuela, we got one report from the government, and then of course there's other reports that are coming from other sources as well. And it seems like in this movie that you've made, Bombshell, and not movie, but TV series or TV show, Bombshell, and everything that you were talking about how a lot of people were concerned. And I know that some of the creators were concerned about the atomic bomb, even people like Einstein and others, but apparently there were some journalists that were concerned as well about the consequences. And that's part of what Bombshell is about, is that you found that there were some African American journalists, I believe, and other journalists that had concerns about what could happen. So if you could just tell us a little bit about Bombshell. I think I kind of gave it in a little bit of a nutshell, but if you can just tell us a little bit more about that, and I'm gonna bring in Rick Rosner, one of our other regulars as well, but everything like that. But if you could just share a little bit about this PBS special that you were part of, that was part of the American Experience series.
Yes. Bombshell, as you said, is about the information that was put out by the government, including what was then called the Department of War,
Mm-hmm.
to the narrative to about um, making the atomic bomb look less devastating than it actually was. And it did,
Right.
of course, acknowledge the devastation of it. It had to be a potent weapon in order to end the war. And however, I guess it put a good, but it neglected to, well, it covered up basically. The government's narrative covered up the devastating effects on the victims. These are victims who were not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, these were included the civilians. And it wasn't just from the blast itself. Of course, people are going to be
Right.
killed from a bomb blast. But over time, there was radiation sickness. And it was if the documentary showed how they made it look as though that it was just a blast. Also, there will be scenes in the documentary, and I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. It's one of those documentaries that I think you need to watch several times to really, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot in that documentary. Uh, but it pointed out how General Groves, who headed the Manhattan Project for the Department of Defense, one of the people which was part of the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb, um, even said to Congress that if you're going to die, that was a good way to die. Right. Uh, so they went to that extent to cover up the true devastation of the bomb.
Well,
And
before I bring
then,
in Rick, one of the things I was watching. Go ahead.
oh, I was going to also say, I want to make sure I completely answered your question with regards to journalists. And um,
Yes.
so there were some journalists, and one journalist in particular from the New York Times, who was had been considered the uh, science journalist, named William Lawrence. Um, just
Mm-hmm.
basically, I mean, not to mean any disrespect to him, was basically used by the War Department to um, to give credibility to the information that they were given. He didn't question it or anything like that, as a journalist technically should do. But he wasn't the only one who didn't question it.
Right.
The War Department, as it had done in World War One, as well as in this war, they would put out press releases, and the journalists would just publish word for word what was in the press release. Okay, now, and I can go into more details as we continue with the conversation, because I'm not trying to paint the journalists in a bad light. This was wartime, so they did not want to do anything that would criticize the War Department or anything regarding the military efforts. During that time, they didn't. And that put the Black press in a unique position, because they were always criticizing the government. They're always criticizing American society because of the discrimination. But I can go into that a little bit further as we continue the conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was watching one of the late night shows, and I'll bring in Rick Rosner as well and everything. But they were interviewing, and it might have been Seth Goldberg and everything. But he was interviewing Terry Gross, I believe is her name, and everything. But she's the longtime host of Fresh Air, and she was talking about the importance of corporation of public broadcasting and everything like that, even in her own work and all in that space. So I was just wondering, because that is an agency that's been in the fire lately and everything, how important was it in this particular project that you were having and everything like that, and your concerns or maybe lack of concerns about what's going on in terms of how public broadcasting is being treated?
Well, this documentary was originally supposed to come out back in August to mark the 80th anniversary of the dropping of the atomic bomb. But because of the cuts and they had to make adjustments with the cuts in support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, it delayed the broadcast. And so obviously they were able to get enough money to put this on this date. And interestingly, the day before, that's when they shut down the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. Right. We're like,
So made it just in the nick of time and everything.
In the nick of time. So I'm like, oh, are they going to really show it? But it was done. And so they did show it Tuesday night. So then there are links that you can watch it on your own if you like to.
Yeah, I have hypothetical questions about.
Definitely, we'll do that and everything.
So, if the bomb had been ready a year earlier, would the U.S. have dropped it on Berlin, or did it make a difference that we were dropping it on non-white people? Does that make us more willing to deploy it?
That was the belief that, that was a speculation. That was a suspicion that of the willingness to drop it on people of color. However, I don't know. I can't say. I've never read any discussions. I'm sure that there were about them possibly dropping it on Berlin, if necessary to end the war. But it didn't turn out that way. So I don't think we'll ever know. But it would be interesting to explore what
another hypothetical is. I'm sure they had discussions about whether to drop it over a city or drop two cities over less populated areas. And a related question is, I've also heard, I go on Twitter and I see all sorts of stuff, and I don't know if it's true or not, that it wasn't really the bomb that caused Japan to surrender. It was the threat of being invaded from the north by Russia.
I think both of them had something to do with Japan surrendering, but the documentary does reveal that that the bomb was needed because the invasion would not have been enough for them to surrender. They were going to keep fighting to the very end.
Okay. I've also heard that it would
What,
have taken up to 1 million U.S. casualties to take Japan via an invasion.
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been a lot and everything. What parallels, Ms. Ross, have you seen to what's going on with Venezuela? Because we know that there's a lot of been miscommunication and intentional miscommunication from the government and everything like that with the capture of Maduro. But what parallels, even as you've been watching the news, have you seen between what you found in your documentary and what's going on in modern times?
Oh, the parallels are striking, I would say, because it's like history repeating itself. And I would say uh, uh, this time, I'd like to think this time the public might be the wiser for that, questioning it more on the one hand. Um, However, now we're more polarized. You know, we have different camps. You have
Mm-hmm.
the left and the right, and the and so they've been able to the the government in this configuration today is able to, and maybe a few years back they've been able to configure it into, oh, this is the left version of this, and this is the right
Mm-hmm.
version of this. And I don't hear enough people say, well, what is the truth in all of that? And so, um,
Right.
so it's a little um, in more uh, uh, different. Same goal is to make the other side, one side, look good, to make the government look good, and to play on the emotions
Yeah,
of the public, particularly. But now I think it's on depending on which side that they have placed you in. And
yeah.
I might say back
That makes
in
sense.
after the in the. Oh, go ahead, Mark. That's a,
No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought.
and I was saying back around the time of the atomic bomb, the emotion of the public was the war is over, and they were really caught up in um, the fact that they're no longer in wartime. They're thinking, the public is thinking about their loved ones coming home victorious. Um, they're feeling a sense of relief that we were not under that wartime threat of being hit or attacked again. And so, um, and if you look at the timing of the period of time after the bomb and when this particular story came out, questioning the radiation effects, I think it was kind of buried in the hoopla of, in the glow of victory at that time. So I think it was a little bit
Yeah,
more
well, speaking.
logical then.
Yeah. But speaking of that glow of victory, I know that at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, there was an exhibit about Booker T. Spicely. So we know that there were a number of soldiers that were coming back, and they weren't always greeted as well as they should have been by the overall public, and not just, of course, they were rated well by their own communities and everything like that, but a lot of the rest of the population did not do that well. We were still in the middle of segregation, and of course the black press was fighting against that, just like they were revealing some of the things that were going on with the war. So I was wondering if you could talk about the black press's role in what was going on with the atomic war, I mean, the atomic bomb, as well as what was going on with just that time. Because, like I said, I'm familiar with Booker T. Spicely, familiar with a couple of other cases where people were literally killed even well before Rosa Parks as they were trying to get on the bus after the war had ended.
Mm-hmm. Well, the black press was, I guess, was a source where you could look to for pride in, to feel pride in the contributions of the Black soldiers. And that was one of the reasons why they insisted on getting access to the front lines. And this goes all the way back to World War I, when the Black press met with the War Department so that, and with, I could just, that's another rabbit hole I can go into about a list of demands, all about if basically in World War One, as well as in World War Two. The Black press said, if you want the loyalty of the Black community and us as spokespersons for the Black community, then you give us access to the military activities, the same access that you give the white publications. And we will kind of temper our protest furor, although they really didn't, but we can ensure the loyalty, because what the Black newspapers did was they said, support the troops, support the cause, and be willing to contribute to the cause. The enemy is Hitler, the enemy is Japan, and although we know that we're getting the bad treatment in this country, put that aside and join the cause. And so that you had that going on, and then you would go to the Black newspapers, you'll find out heroic actions. This is in both world wars of the Black soldiers, and also there would be families, and in my family, I know definitely on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother would put in articles, little news notes, submit them to the local newspaper about her son's particular joining the war effort. And and in Black newspapers, they might see a photo of someone's son or husband or brother in their uniform, proudly, so and so is coming home from the war, or they're going to the war, and all that. So there was a sense of pride, and that you would get that in the Black press that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Seriously. And might I just add another one? Now, this isn't. No, I'm sorry. I can't. What?
No problem. I was going to ask you. I'm familiar with the movie Hidden Figures, which talks about the role of the Black women within exploration and science and everything like that. But I was just wondering, were there any in your research? Did you find any African Americans that were involved in the creation of the atomic bomb, not just the resistance against the atomic bomb, but even in the creation of the bomb as well?
Oh yeah. The Black newspapers would highlight with pictures of the Black people, the scientists, the mathematicians who played a role in putting together the bomb. Plenty of that. Yes. I can't think of names right now, but and not only what they did during the war, but continued to follow their careers after the war. They would have speaking engagements, so they would highlight speaking engagements of this one or two or three or four different scientists as well. So yes, they were proud of them.
Sounds like they were very proud of them and everything along those lines. Now, when did you first get involved in creating this project, and how long has the project been? Because it sounds like it's been something that's been going on for a while and everything along those lines. So when did you first decide that this was some research that you wanted to get into, and what led you, or what was the impetus for this research to find out about the role of the Black press in the fighting against some of the narrative that was being presented?
Well, one of my research area has been the Black press, and I had done a number of articles about Black press during wartime, certain things about, and as if you're doing certain articles about specific areas of the wartime, obviously you're reading the work of other scholars, and so I'm trying to think of, uh, it's been many years of doing it, of looking at that, but I was looking at, of course, I did a literature review of, Black, of how the Black press has been researched, and there are plenty of articles, things work done about the Black press's role during wartime, both world wars, and so I kind of knew about that in general, not necessarily specifically about the atomic, the atomic bomb. And the producer, I'm assuming, had looked at my body of work and thought that I could add more to the Black press's role in general, and contextualize their reactions to the atomic bomb. And so that's what I contributed to it. And I was approached maybe 4 years ago. So I know this project has gone on for at least 4 years.
Can you talk about
how important do you think it is?
Can you talk about the era's pressure to conform? And I guess this is probably the era that shaped Trump's MAGA worldview, that everything was great back then. We know it was probably great for some white families, but there was a lot of not great, but there was also seems to be a lot of pressure for people to shut up about the not great.
Right, it is. I think they want to, go back to the 18th century. Not just go back to it, but prior to the Civil War, that's the mindset that I'm getting from them, that it's make America great again, before during the antebellum times. That's what I'm getting, not just going back to World War II, but further than that, which is astonishing, but maybe not necessarily surprising.
So I guess to address the era you're talking about, was there pressure on the Black press to conform and to not to go along with the idea that America is the king of the world and everything's awesome?
Yes. Especially during wartime. During both world wars, the FBI would visit Black press facilities and interview journalists whom they thought had heard was linked to the enemy, and if they did not stop complaining about discrimination and Jim Crow and all those things, then they would get their mail privileges revoked. So there was direct pressure, especially during World War II, and definitely started during World War I. Absolutely.
Did you really talk about the MacArthur area? Because I know that was also the time that it was the Great Red Scare, and a number of people, including Paul Robeson, were painted as being communists, whether they were communists or not. And I imagine that was going on with some of the journalists, including some of the journalists that were reporting on the atomic bomb and everything like that. So was there a pushback, and was there a lot of the journalists that were pulled in front of the MacArthur hearings?
I do know about, I can't name any journalists. I know there were, I just don't recall their names specifically, but I know there were some who maybe lost their careers because of their perceived or true connections with communists. And the Black press made sure that they
Mhm.
presented themselves as being against communism, made sure of that. In the same way that they made sure that they were supporting the US's war efforts.
Now, the other thing I know that was going on during that time that impacted the community, and particularly the minority community, was this notion of some factories being converted to more like wartime type factories as well, whether that was with the creation or the development of bombs, or whether that was other products. Because I know even here in Durham, there, of course, we had tobacco factories and textile factories. I'm sure that some of those were converted to other purposes during the wartime and everything like that. So does the book touch on this notion of what was going on with the women back home? Because a lot of the men were in wartime and wasn't that many women soldiers at that time, but there were maybe a few, but not as many as there are now. But I just wondered, did you touch on the conversion of some of the factory spaces, which we know can take place in the wartime? We're probably even seeing that in Ukraine right now.
We did not touch on that in general, but we did touch on, and maybe this was part of your question, but we did touch on the documentary did touch on these factories manufacturing the bomb or some aspect of the bomb in certain places in the United States. I think there was one in Tennessee, maybe one in Washington, of course, New Mexico, and maybe some other places where they were looked upon as just a factory, manufacturing whatever. It might have been some part of the bomb, but I'm just saying it might have been a widget that, but was not identified a widget that's going to be part of the atomic bomb. It was that, and you had communities that were built around these factories, and the people worked there, civilians worked there, including women. Typically, women will do things that were expected of women. They might be cooking the food. They might be, serving the food in the cafeteria. They may be making the beds. Maybe they might be doing some things, being in the clerical area. Those are just jobs to those people. They were, I'm sure somebody who was a server at the cafeteria, their job is to serve at the cafeteria at the XYZ factory and focused on serving the food and all that. Or someone who might be in job in hammering parts of the widgets together. It was just a widget. I don't know what they called it, but how the factory, where that widget was going to go, was not of their concern. It was just a job, and they didn't know that it was the country. There was such a tightly kept secret of the War Department that people unknowingly had a role in manufacturing the bomb.
Now, this particular thing is called Bombshell, and of course, it deals with the bomb and all along those lines. But what was something that was a bombshell to you that surprised you when you were doing your research? Like I said, I'm sure you found out about these African American journalists, but there had to have been other things that surprised you in your research. Because I know anytime somebody does research, there are things that they are not expecting to find that are shocking even to them as they are doing the research.
Well, one of the things that surprised me was, I guess it reminded me of the creative strategy of the Black press, of Black reporters, where, yes, on the one hand, they knew they had to be loyal, but on the other hand, they still managed to fulfill their obligation to be an advocate for the Black community. And so it made me think of, why while on the one hand, we're anti-communist. This is terrible what Paul Robeson was doing, going against this country. This is terrible what W.E.B. Du Bois, what happened to him. This is terrible, Marcus Garvey, because they were very critical of them. You are an embarrassment to the race by, acting out like that. But at the same time, it made me wonder if they were saying that out front, but winking, oh, yeah, we got you. You go, Garvey. But up front, out loud, it was something else. And it made me think about it when I was looking at the way Charles Loeb wrote that story about that was featured in the documentary. Basically, he was wrote a report that it was easy to miss, where he's saying things. He was talking about the devastating effects, particularly the radiation sickness that came as a result of the bomb. Well, Charles Loeb studied pre-med when he was at Howard. Okay, he didn't get his degree there because he didn't have the money to continue there, but he studied pre-med. And so he knew what radiation sickness was. He knew, the science behind those things. And so he was able to discern from the propaganda and from that, there's no radiation sickness whatsoever. But in his heart, he knew that there was. And he found a pretty clever way of letting the readers know that, yes, it's a possibility of those rays. And so he would say there's considerable argument as to radioactivity still remaining in the explosion area. And the Japanese claimed that there was. But then, so he let us know that this is what the Japanese claimed, that there was, and all the things associated with it. But then, to cover himself, he said, but our Colonel Stafford Warren Medical Corps is of the opinion that those patients who were affected by radiation resulted from a single exposure. So he managed to, I guess, both sides of the issue, but also revealing, there's some radioactivity. And it got enough attention to enough people to further question the government's line about it. And so that line lasted, the propaganda lasted for maybe a couple of months anyway. So, the bomb was dropped in August. Journalists tour the bomb site in September and October. So you're talking about a 2 or 3 month period of time when the government was trying to downplay the radiation sickness. But by November, they ended up coming clean about that. Okay, there's some radiation sickness in later months and all that, because too many people were raising questions about that.
Did your work reveal ongoing pressure from the government to say everything's okay with nuclear programs? For instance, like right now, there's a book called Nuclear War, and there's the movie House of Dynamite, which shows that our nuclear safeguards are very threadbare. So, did the pressure continue?
Yes. There's this one guy, I think, Jacobson. He's who was Dr. Jacobson had questioned the safety had questions about the radiation effects of the bomb, and I vaguely remember during my research a later article denouncing him as an individual. You know, how they, and he was presented as though, you know, he was a bad person in some type of way because of that, and that he's not to be trusted. I don't remember the exact words, but yeah, that type of pressure did exist. That's what I did run across that.
If I can make a parallel, it seems to me, and others may see this parallel as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, Ms. Ross, about this and everything like that. But we know that there was recently a slaying of a young lady in Minneapolis, and we've heard different renditions of how that was reported. Of course, there's the government saying that she was instigating and all along those lines. And then, of course, there's other people that are saying and showing the video where she was literally shot and everything like that. I think 3 bullets and all in that kind of way. But I was just wondering, it sounds like there's a much of a parallel between the way that the government is handling this incident and the way the government was handling the atomic bomb and the radiation poisoning and everything like that. So am I missing something, or would you say that that is a correct comparison?
It's a correct comparison. Yeah, definitely that, because they even did things like make propaganda films about the reason that it was necessary to drop the bomb, you know, and they had, you know, it was all polished and whatnot, likable people, and I forgot the actors or anything, but you know, telegenic people were performing the roles. Some of there were movies made. I forgot the name of that movie, but there were movies made about that promoted the fact that it was necessary to drop the bomb because it would have been worse for us if we had. You save more lives by if we hadn't dropped the bomb, a lot more lives would have been lost, and it was presented in that way. Also denigrating the Japanese as being ruthless, cold-blooded killers. You know, who would chop your head off at any moment. So, you know, so did you want this type of life? So, in other words, the bomb, it was worth it in the long run to drop the bomb. So they absolutely did that then.
Is it reasonable to say, though, that the propagandists of 80 years ago were competent compared to the White House propagandists of today? That people believed it more because it was a better presentation? They had Walt Disney making propaganda films and all these great directors. And now what comes out of the White House is just slop.
Yeah. They were also propaganda in the United States really started, I say a starting point was World War One. I mean, the Committee on Public Information really got started with what we call press releases, and also, you know, you had more media technology. You're able to be more visual, starting with World War One. And audio visual between the wars, and so there was a sophistication about selling the war to the public and to get public sentiment, public support. They really started that, I'll say, in World War One. And so during that particular time, it was still relatively new and there was a desire to support the war effort, to support the government, especially when we were under threat from another country. And so the times were different. Now we've had people study public relations, study message manipulation. And so now we're in a better position, I think, to challenge the stuff that's coming out now. Also, we have citizen journalists, with people showing videos on the scene in real time and posting them in real time, such as what happened with what's that lady's name? With Miss Good the other day.
Renee Nicole Gold. Good.
Miss Good. Miss Good the other day. I mean, it would have been very easy to, want to believe the administration. You want to believe that your government, your elected officials, especially if you voted for those, you want them to do well. You want to believe that. And so, but now you have video evidence contradicting that. It goes back to George Floyd back in 2020. I tell my students, I show them the press release that Minneapolis Police Department put out explaining what happened to George Floyd, that it was in a medical emergency. It was like he had a pre-existing medical condition, and he died from that. At the same time, you see the video evidence contradicting that. So it's a little bit, we know now to be more skeptical about information that we're getting. In my opinion, I don't think we're skeptical enough. I don't think we're critical enough, because people are so willing to support people, the proponents of their ideology, whether it's true or not. Because and some of the lies are just like January 6th. People are want to believe January 6th was a day of love. They want to believe that Antifa were the people who raided the Capitol that day. They want to believe that because it fits into their ideology.
So in the lower right corner, you got Sasha, who grew up in Ukraine under the Soviet Union and had an even more oppressive, I'm sure, propaganda regime.
Yeah, I must say that the Russian propaganda has been famous not only now, but for the last 80 years, or probably even more than that. And this is one of the most successful propaganda machines of all time, because not only they've worked well on their own population, but also on population of many other countries in the world, making them to believe that the communism, which to tell the truth never existed in Russia, even theoretically, but at least attempts to try to build communism are extremely successful. And by the way, you mentioned, I think, Paul Robeson. He was a famous singer. He was extremely popular in Soviet Union. I remember the time when I was going to school there, and Paul Robeson was extremely popular, and he was giving concerts, and he was giving interview where he described himself as a fighter for the rights of black people in the United States and around the world. And so he was indeed very popular there. I don't think it will make him a hero of our audience here, but we're talking about many, many years ago. Now, speaking about issue of atomic bombs or nuclear bombs or whatever. Number one, that unfortunately, Americans didn't have the advantage over the Soviet Union for a long time. It was a window of maybe 2-3 years, and then Russia developed, with the help of espionage, they developed their own nuclear device, and around 1960, they've experimented with the largest ever bomb, so-called Tsar bomb, which was a 50 megatons bomb, and the uh, the bomb like that is extreme danger. It's not only just a heat wave, radiation of enormous the capacities. It's just, but such a weapon has been already tried. So it could be built. It could be built in several different variations. And right now we're going to have in 10 minutes the program about Ukrainian situation where Russia last night, they've used one of their ballistic missiles, which is flying at the speed of 13,000 kilometers an hour. And its effects are devastating even without nuclear warhead. Imagine that there would be also a nuclear warhead. What could be consequences of that? And I'm horrified to see that the rest of the world, including the United States, they are not voicing some kind of a message to Putin to immediately stop the bombardments of the civilian population, women, children, older people, because there is absolutely no military aim of this missile, only the psychological threat, but actually killing a lot of innocent people. So this is incredible how Trump is continuing all the so-called peace efforts between Ukraine and Russia. And he's wasted a year talking to Putin and bringing him to Alaska and sending his advisors to him and making telephone calls for a year while Putin is murdering innocent people almost daily. How that can work? I really don't understand that. And but we'll see. Ukraine is getting stronger and stronger on the battlefield. They're developing their own the not only defense but also the attacking devices, including the drones and sea drones and missiles now, and they're targeting the Russian refineries, even 1,500 kilometers away from Ukraine. So Russia should be, especially now with all the embargoes, and now Americans started to enforce the embargo on selling of Russian oil and gas. So I think it's all coming to a head. But I want to tell you something interesting, that if the peace will not be there right now, slowly but surely Ukraine will take over Russia on a battlefield. They will. The Ukrainian fighters are incredible people. There is no such army in the world that could withstand the Russian army, which was supposedly second in the world for 4 years now. It's incredible. It's impossible. Nobody will ever. I mean, remember when Second World War, then Germany started invasion of France. France capitulated instantly. I mean, they wouldn't even fight. Although they had, at that time, they still had a bigger army than Germany. But they wouldn't fight. They just capitulated. Not Ukraine. It's not going to happen.
No doubt about that and everything like that. Just really quickly, and along those same lines, and we've only got a few more minutes to go and everything. Dr. Ross, one of the things I've seen, because one of the people that Sasha has on his show is a journalist in Kyiv and everything like that. So I just wondered if you could just talk about the importance of journalism, particularly because I know that Nick sometimes fights against them or pushes back against them, the importance of PBS journalists and public broadcasting in terms of journalism and everything along those lines. So I just wondered if you could speak to the importance of journalists both then and now.
Well, journalists have to decide, and I guess it's up to the professors, um, uh, news organizations, in some cases, the conscience of journalists, as to what their priorities are. By that I mean, are they just giving out information to get clicks, views, raise circulation? Yeah, that's one thing. Are they going to act as an entity, as what we call it the fourth estate, and that is serve as a fourth branch of government? Are you going to take the responsibility of holding the holding maintaining democracy, protecting democracy by holding um, public officials, especially elected officials, the government, other institutions that are powerful institutions, accountable, and so, and I think it gets, when I told my students that, I said, what are your values? Do you want to maintain democracy, or you just want to make money, putting out whatever information you get and be done with it? And I think we need to have that type of debate, that type of discussion about what we expect journalists to do. I admire the independent journalists that were once get these things out of the way that were once part of mainstream establishments. I'm thinking of Joy Ann Reid. She was once with what's now MS Now. Don Lemon once with CNN. I think John Acosta went with CNN, and I heard now Terry Moran is no longer with ABC. Those journalists I'm speaking of, who who appear to be with the ones who want to maintain democracy, and now that they're away from those established places, they're more free to do that. They don't have those restrictions. Also, we have the Black Press with Roland Martin with his podcast, and they are more free to be skeptical, I think. And so, is that the direction we want to go as journalists? Is that what we're expecting from journalists, to cut through, get us to the truth, regardless of which side is favored? So, I mean, I guess they put me on the progressive side, and so if I tend to go that way, since they put me in that box, I don't put myself in that box. But I want the truth. If it makes my ideology or my beliefs, if it's unflattering, okay, so be it.
Can you tell people how to see your film? I see you can watch it online, and I assume there are other ways to.
It's by doing podcasts such as this, and it was on Tuesday night. It went on PBS Tuesday night. So I think so you would have to check your local stations just to see if it's going to be aired again. It's already aired 3 times on the PBS station in Columbus, Ohio, where I live. But others who have expressed an interest, who missed it, I've sent them the link to that, so you can watch it online if you need to. So
I see if you go to pbs.org bombshell, you got to add some other stuff in, but if you search for it like that, I think it'll show up.
Also, American Experience Bombshell, because it's part of that series, and you can go right to it that way.
Appreciate you. Get ready to wind up and everything like that. Jacoby, did you have any comments that you want to make? You've been listening as well, and I know you're over there in Durham along with myself, but you've been listening to Dr. Ross talk about her movie Bombshell and everything like that. So I didn't know if you had any further comments. Hopefully we'll get her on the media show and some other shows as well.
No comment. I was just listening in.
So Bombshell is a serious treatment of the era, but there's an unserious treatment of the era that's sort of like a companion piece almost called Fallout on Prime, which is, it's what would have happened if there'd been a huge nuclear exchange that froze the US in time for the past 50, 60 years. And it's goofy, but it's got a 50s aesthetic. And it is all about the implications of, you know, the nuclear industrial complex.
Well, it's a little bit more than that, but I mean, it started as a video game, became a book and cartoon. Well, not really cartoon, but yeah, it's basically based off of a video game. But yeah, there's a lot to it.
Well, I appreciate you being on.
Sounds
Dr.
interesting.
Ross. Appreciate you being on, Dr. Ross.
To add on to, I mean, honestly, it would be something to watch because it actually does while if you take all the goofiness and everything else aside from the actual show, the premise of the actual video game itself is rooted heavily within politics, societal pressures, communities. There's in the game itself, but the movie has done a good job in terms of trying to portray the show has done a good job at trying to portray the emptiness in society in particular areas when you're trapped and you want to escape, you want that freedom, but you're trapped in a perpetual you have to deal with factions and a whole bunch. It's something well worth watching. I mean, if you look deeply into actually the storyline and the histrionics behind it, it tells actually a very compelling story. But I mean, I don't know if it's on the same par as Bombshell.
Yeah, but Bombshell is 82 minutes, I see. So you can get a sense of, if you're going to invest in Fallout, it's one of those things where you have to invest like, dozens of hours.
There, in terms of Bombshell, a good comparison, because of the lies and the propaganda that also got pushed out as you were speaking about. Honestly, Chernobyl on HBO would be a good companion to that because of what went on with Chernobyl and the confusion, lies, and everything else that came out from Chernobyl. But HBO did a good documentary on that. And I would recommend that over Fallout. But
okay.
Yeah.
On that note, I'll get us on out of here. But I appreciate you, Dr. Ross, and we'll have you back in the very near future and everything like that. So definitely glad to be able to have this conversation with you, and hopefully more people will learn about Bombshell and go and check it out.
Thank you so much.
No problem.